Good evening. I'm Victor Corday, and today we're examining one of the most significant political upheavals in recent Latin American history, the dramatic fall of Nicolás Maduro and the rise of Delcy Rodríguez to power in Venezuela. What initially appeared to be a sudden coup has now been revealed as the culmination of months of secret negotiations involving multiple international intelligence agencies. Let's break down what actually happened. On January 5, 2026, Nicolás Maduro was removed from power in Venezuela after ruling the country for over a decade. His vice president, Delcy Rodríguez, immediately assumed control. While the transition shocked many observers, new intelligence reports suggest this was far from spontaneous. The groundwork had been laid months earlier through clandestine diplomatic channels. According to recently disclosed information from intelligence sources, Delcy Rodríguez engaged in a series of covert meetings in Doha, Qatar, during the final months of 2025. Between September and November, while still serving as Maduro's vice president, she met repeatedly with CIA operatives at a luxury hotel in the Qatari capital. Qatar served as the neutral mediator for these sensitive discussions. These weren't casual diplomatic encounters. The meetings focused specifically on orchestrating Maduro's removal and planning Rodríguez's assumption of power. The fact that these negotiations occurred while she publicly served as his second-in-command reveals the depth of the conspiracy against Maduro. But Rodríguez wasn't working alone. Her brother, Jorge Rodríguez, 4 years her senior, had been conducting parallel negotiations through different channels. Jorge had developed a relationship with Richard Grenell, former U.S. ambassador to Germany, whom he first met in Mexico in 2020. When the current administration designated Grenell as special envoy to Venezuela in early 2025, Jorge's connections became invaluable. During her time in Doha, Delcy Rodríguez also held at least one meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Igor Sechin, the head of Rosneft, Russia's state oil company. This suggests she was simultaneously negotiating Venezuela's energy future with Moscow while coordinating Maduro's overthrow with Washington, a remarkable balancing act. The transition itself was swift and violent. In the early morning hours of January 3rd, military operations commenced at Fort Tiuna, Venezuela's primary military headquarters. Reports indicate that 56 individuals died during the operation, including 32 Cuban security personnel who were protecting Maduro. This detail alone reveals how dependent the Maduro regime had become on foreign security forces. Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, were captured and subsequently transferred to U.S. custody. They now face trial in the United States on various charges. By January 5th, Delcy Rodríguez had formally assumed the presidency. One of the first challenges to the new administration came from an unexpected source, Alex Saab, Maduro's longtime financial operator and alleged frontman. Saab, who had previously spent 2 years in U.S. custody before being released in a prisoner exchange, controlled significant financial assets on Maduro's behalf. Upon learning of Maduro's capture on January 3rd, Saab ordered a cargo tanker carrying 500,000 barrels of Venezuelan oil to depart immediately from Venezuela's eastern coast. The vessel, known as either the Olina or Minerva I, left port without proper authorization from PDVSA, Venezuela's state oil company, and without payment for the cargo. The shipment was valued at approximately $25 to $30 million and was reportedly headed toward Asia, likely to be sold to Chinese buyers at a discount. When Delcy Rodríguez learned of this unauthorized departure, she immediately contacted U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. In what has become a revealing example of the new power dynamic, she requested American intervention to intercept the vessel and return it to Venezuelan waters. Rubio complied without hesitation. U.S. authorities intercepted the tanker and escorted it back to Venezuela, where the 500,000 barrels were recovered by PDVSA. This incident demonstrates two critical realities. First, that Rodriguez operates with significant support from Washington, and second, that she has powerful enemies within Venezuela's corrupt power structure who are willing to steal from the state even as the regime changes hands. The relationship between Saab and Rodriguez has long been adversarial, but Saab isn't Delcy Rodriguez's most dangerous opponent. That distinction belongs to Diosdado Cabello, one of the most powerful figures in Venezuelan politics and a historical enemy of the Rodriguez siblings. Cabello controls much of Venezuela's security apparatus, including ties to the military, police, National Guard, and intelligence services. While Rodriguez negotiated her path to power through diplomatic channels, Cabello built his influence through force and intimidation. The tension between these two power centers could define Venezuela's immediate future. Another notable figure is Vladimir Padrino Lopez, Venezuela's Minister of Defense, who has remained conspicuously silent and out of public view since the transition. His absence has fueled speculation about whether he supports the new government or is preparing to flee the country. The question now is whether Cabello will accept Rodriguez's authority or challenge it. If he were to arrest her and her brother, accusing them of being CIA operatives, which, given the Doha meetings, wouldn't be entirely unfounded, he would directly confront the United States. However, Cabello lacks Rodriguez's diplomatic flexibility and her willingness to cooperate with Washington, which may limit his options. One of the early promises from the new Rodriguez administration was the release of political prisoners. Initially, there were announcements suggesting that hundreds, possibly more than 800 individuals, would be freed. However, as of now, only 17 have been released. According to human rights organizations monitoring Venezuela, approximately 803 political prisoners remain in detention. This discrepancy raises questions about whether Rodriguez genuinely intended to release prisoners but was blocked by Cabello's security apparatus, or whether the promise was merely a diplomatic gesture to appease Washington without substance. The failure to deliver on this commitment places Rodriguez in a delicate position with her American backers, particularly Secretary Rubio, who has made human rights a stated priority. Recent reports confirm that Delcy Rodriguez speaks daily with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This level of direct communication between a Venezuelan head of state and the U.S. government is unprecedented and reveals the nature of the current arrangement. Rodriguez doesn't merely cooperate with Washington, she requests favors and acts on American guidance. The tanker interception is just one example. This relationship has led some analysts to describe her as effectively governing Venezuela as an American protectorate, with Rubio serving as the ultimate authority on major decisions. The United States has issued an ultimatum to the Cuban government, demanding negotiations and warning that the regime's days are numbered. The current administration has made clear that Venezuela will no longer provide oil to Cuba, a subsidy that once reached 100,000 barrels per day under Hugo Chávez and had decreased to approximately 30,000 barrels daily under Maduro, but still represented crucial support for the island's economy. Additionally, all Cuban security personnel, intelligence operatives, and military advisors are being expelled from Venezuela. The 32 Cuban guards who died defending Maduro at Fort Tiuna represented just a fraction of Cuba's security presence in the country. Also being sent home are thousands of Cuban doctors who worked in Venezuela under conditions many described as indentured servitude, with their salaries paid to Havana rather than to the medical professionals themselves. The message from Washington is clear. Cuba's influence in Venezuela is over, and the island nation itself may face intensified pressure in the coming months. Nicolás Maduro now sits in U.S. custody, awaiting trial. An unusual conflict has emerged over his legal representation. Two prominent attorneys are vying to defend him, Barry Pollock and Bruce Fine. The disagreement appears to stem from Maduro's extended family, specifically relatives of his wife Celia Flores, including her sons from a previous marriage and her nephews, who were previously convicted on drug trafficking charges in the United States. The family reportedly distrusts Pollock and prefers Fine, while others in Maduro's circle favor Pollock's experience. A federal judge will ultimately decide who will serve as Maduro's attorney after meeting privately with the former dictator. The irony is stark. Maduro, who denied due process to thousands of political prisoners during his rule, now benefits from the independent judicial system of the very country he spent years denouncing. Maduro's legal fees will reportedly be paid by Alex Saab, or from assets Maduro accumulated during his years in power, wealth stolen from the Venezuelan people. Venezuela stands at a crossroads. Delcy Rodriguez has consolidated power with American backing, but faces significant internal opposition from figures like Diosdado Cabello, who control the means of violence. The release of political prisoners remains incomplete. The country's oil wealth is being reorganized under new management. And Cuban influence, which shaped Venezuelan politics for 2 decades, is being systematically dismantled. Meanwhile, there are reports that Miguel Rodriguez Torres, a former chief of Venezuela's Bolivarian intelligence service and a notorious figure in the country's security apparatus, may return from exile in Spain to work with the new government. His potential involvement would signal either a dangerous continuity with past repression or an attempt by Rodriguez to build her own security structure independent of Cabello. The Cuban government, through President Miguel Díaz-Canel, has denounced American intervention and vowed to resist to the last drop of blood. Whether this rhetoric translates to meaningful support for anti-Rodriguez elements in Venezuela remains to be seen. What we're witnessing in Venezuela is not simply a change in leadership, but a fundamental realignment of power in Latin America. The secret negotiations in Doha, the daily coordination with Washington, the expulsion of Cuban operatives, and the internal power struggles all point to a nation in profound transition. Whether Delcy Rodriguez can maintain control, whether political prisoners will be freed, whether Diosdado Cabello will challenge her authority, and whether Venezuela's oil wealth will benefit its people or merely enrich a new set of elites, these questions will define the country's trajectory in 2026. The story is far from over. As new information emerges from intelligence sources, and as the internal dynamics continue to evolve, we'll continue to monitor and analyze these developments. This is Victor Cord. Stay informed, stay critical, and we'll see you in the next analysis.